Hi, I'm John Fielder, and with me today is Kathy Baird. Kathy is a patient advocate whose services are available to the quantum branches. And we feel it's important to make this videotape so that you can have a better understanding of what it is that Kathy is doing on a day-to-day basis to benefit quantum consumers, but also others who are not on quantum service. So Kathy, can you explain your role as a patient advocate? What exactly do you do?
Well, John, to explain that, I have to explain my belief that every individual is entitled to medical care. And as we know, individuals in this country don't always receive the medical care that they need. It is not available to them as it should be. And so what I do is I make sure that that help is provided. Unfortunately, I can't help everyone. I would like to. But my time, my resources are not such that I can help the entire world, everyone who needs the help. And so what I do is I ensure that those who are fortunate enough to find me and seek out my help, they get the help that they need. I have, in the last 7 years of doing this kind of work, I have worked with over 300 people, and every single one of those cases has been solved. They have been able to find the help that they have sought.
That's an excellent track record. And I think that's why we really want to have this conversation today, is so that our folks can access you and find out how to utilize your services better. Can you give me an idea of what you do on a typical day? I mean, what happens when you're in your office dealing with a number of daily challenges?
Well, basically what I do is, I have an office in my home, and I work about 3 to 4 hours a day. If someone is trying to contact me and they get my answering machine frequently, that's the reason why. I put 200% of my energy into this work, and that's why I limit the hours a day that I do it, because I am trying to protect myself from burnout. And so what I do is I take the telephone calls from individual patients, from the branches, from other organizations, from a lot of different places that call me and ask me for help. And then I identify what the problem is, what the needs are. And in the cases of individual patients who call me, I always reassure them that I am here to help. Oftentimes I'll hear the phrase, "You are the last one on my list. I have nowhere else to go. I don't know what to do." And I will always say to them, "I will help you. I will solve this." It sounds like a lofty statement. It is. But I believe that it has to be done. And I have been in their position, and the problems need to be solved. They need to find some help. And so I'm here to provide that help. Fortunately, I don't need to do that by myself. I have an assistant, Lisa Shaw, who is also my sister-in-law, who knows quite a bit of chronic illness herself. And she helps me with some of the load. Sometimes there are so many people and so many requests that she is my assistant. She helps me with that.
I see. You mentioned being in this position. Can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Well, the foundation for this work really began several years before I was born. There are 5 generations of women that we know of that carry the genetic marker for primary immune deficiency, which, as you know, is a chronic illness. Right. And so that has been my life. That's been everything that I know. I have an older brother with an immune deficiency. He's 37 years old, he has 5 children, and he's awaiting a liver transplant. He struggles with very difficult challenges with his health. I had a 25-year-old cousin who passed away 18 months ago from complications due to chronic illness. I have a 12-year-old son with an immune deficiency as well. And fortunately, he's doing very well. He's on quantum service, he's healthy, he's doing beautifully, but there was a time when we were told that he would not survive the ravages of this disease. That was very difficult. And so that provides me with, in my opinion, some of the best resources in understanding chronic illness. I also have realized that there is little help available When I was in desperate need of help, there were few friendly voices and even fewer helping hands. And I realized that someone had to be there. Someone had to help.
Well, with your real-world experience, how did you link up with Quantum?
Well, actually, the way I started working in this type of work, when things became very difficult and we were without insurance, we had many reimbursement problems. We were without insurance 3 times in 10 years. And I finally became so frustrated that I became involved in a group within my own state to draft a high-risk pool insurance for the uninsurables in the state.
Okay. And you're a resident of Utah?
I'm a resident of Utah, yes. And I became involved in that effort, and then I also became very involved with the National Immune Deficiency Foundation. And after I solved my own crisis, I was asked by many other people to help solve other crises for others. Quantum came to me about 2 years ago and asked for my help in working with the patients that we have through Quantum and others. And because of the corporate philosophy, they felt that I could be an integral part in this program.
I see. Good. In working with a Quantum branch, who normally gives you the phone call that brings you into the loop and kind of gets you involved with the patient's situation?
Normally it will be the nurse manager or someone who is directly involved with the patient and sees that there's a problem or a roadblock. And they call me and I assist in making sure that whatever problem there was is solved.
I see. Okay. Well, we've heard a little bit about your background and how you work with the branches. And with over 300 successful cases, surely there are a few examples that you could share with us.
Well, my favorite story is about a family, the Kim family from Cheonju City, South Korea. About a year ago, I received a call late at night from some people in California who had friends living in South Korea. And this family was unfortunate enough to have a baby who was born in that country with spina bifida. Culturally, that is not an acceptable situation in their country. And so they were not able to get the medical care that they needed. They were calling from a phone booth outside of the hospital in Seoul. They were told by the doctors that this child would not be helped because this situation was unacceptable. The family felt that if they could come to America, the child could be saved. I immediately got on the phone and started calling embassies and hospitals. I was told at every turn that this was an impossible situation. This family, the Kim family, were told by the physicians the child had maybe 48 hours to live, and so I was dealing with a lot of pressure at the time. And I was told that this was impossible, but a couple of days later I did pick up this family at the Salt Lake City airport. That was not an impossible situation. And we got the child to a quality medical facility in Salt Lake City. When the doctors looked at the child, they told the family this was an impossible case. The child had severe meningitis, the procedures were done incorrectly in Korea, and it would be impossible to save this child. Well, fortunately, the child not only survived, but he's thriving. One of the very sad things about this story is that the United States Immigration Department required that this family leave their 10-year-old daughter behind as security, that they would return to their own country and not choose to stay in the United States. Once again, I was told by attorneys and immigration senators' offices that it would be impossible to reunite that family here in the United States, that the child would have to remain in Korea until her parents returned. Well, on Christmas Day of 1993, the child came to this country and was reunited with her family. There was one large obstacle left to cross, and that was in order for the child to remain healthy, he had to stay in the United States. Unfortunately, the family did not have enough money to become students. That's one way people can stay in this country. And he would have to get a job. But it is so difficult for people to come to this country and work. It's made very, very difficult. And so I was once again told that that was an impossible situation, that would not occur. Well, I'm glad to be able to sit here and tell you that a few days ago this man did receive a job which will open the doors for his permanent residency and ultimate citizenship in this country. And the point of that story that I would like to make is, well, actually there are 2 points. The first point is that impossible is not an issue with me. Impossible is simply a state of mind that I do not subscribe to. And the second point is that I am not arrogant enough to take full credit for these kinds of situations that work out. I can't take full credit for each of those 300 cases that were successfully solved. I believe that miracles can occur for those who seek them. That's one of many stories. There's another story of a woman named Debbie Arnold in Michigan. She came to me 2 years ago with really very frustrated, a very ill child, not knowing what to do, not knowing how to get insurance. In a short 2 years, she has been running the premier chapter of the Immune Deficiency Foundation in the country. She's the most successful chapter president. Her family was the only one that was highlighted on the Senate floor this last year. She has senators, she has renowned physicians calling her at her home to ask for her advice on issues. She has done very, very well. That is the point of this work, to take people who have potential, who have problems, and help them to help themselves, and not only help themselves, but to help other people, to really try to involve the ripple effect in what I do. There are people like Joey Darby in Jackson, Mississippi, Lorene Braden in Dallas, Texas, Tally and Gwen Crumhole in Denham Springs, Louisiana. Those are all people, they're families, they have children. They're real stories, real lives that can be changed and turned around and made better. And these are people whose lives have been made much better through the help that they have received through me and through Quantum.
Kathy, you mentioned international challenges and when working with national situations here. What's the best way for a Quantum branch to work with you?
Well, I certainly prefer to be aware of a problem before it's a crisis. It can always be solved more simply if we can be proactive rather than reactive. If we can get to a problem early, we can usually save on the stress level for the patients and the economic output for Quantum. We can usually get donations of services and other things that if we can catch a problem in its early stage.
Okay. We talked about some bigger challenges earlier. What about some simple challenges? Any examples where maybe a phone call or two took care of a problem that seemed at the time very, very serious?
Oh, certainly. A simple challenge, oftentimes individuals will be given misinformation from their federal agency or their state agency if they need Medicaid or some other services. A serious problem that we run into regularly is that people are given misinformation. And so if they will call me, oftentimes I can put them in touch with someone who can give them correct information. Another simple way to solve a problem is simply to empower the patient. Say to them, that is not a correct way for you to be treated. You have the right to call your insurance company and demand some other kind of treatment. Stand up for yourself, to try and train them to be advocates to themselves. And in my opinion, that's the best way to solve a problem simply.
Okay. In your experience, what could you share with those of us at Quantum in terms of a consumer's needs or point of view? What do we need to be aware of in working with the patients that we serve?
Well, I think that you need to be aware that there are two basic needs of the chronically ill, and that is they have a need to feel dignity and a need to feel security. I think if you took a poll throughout the nation, throughout the world of people with chronic illnesses, those are the two greatest needs. And my belief is that if an organization will address those needs, they will have people with chronic illnesses everywhere coming to that organization for help. There are very few places in our healthcare industry that address those issues, dignity and security. People with chronic illness feel that they are victims. They're victims of their illness. They feel victims of their physicians, oftentimes, who they feel are not listening to them as they would like them to. They feel victims of their insurance company or of the system that is set up to help them pay for these costs. And so they need an organization that will not make them feel like a victim, that will treat them with dignity and will give them a sense of security.
Okay. Well, Kathy, it sounds like you're speaking from personal experience.
Well, I am. As I mentioned, I've been in this situation my entire life, and one of the things I've learned is that you need to be a consumer. I think in this country we're very good consumers for many things. Unfortunately, healthcare is not one of those things we're primarily good consumers in. And so one of the things I try to do when I go and do speaking to support groups and groups of the chronically ill patients is I try to teach them how to be good consumers. That's an important issue that we need to remember. Oftentimes we refer to our patients as patients, when in reality they're consumers, they're the customer. An experience I had was with a home health care nurse. I was with another company several years ago. My son was receiving care from another home health care company, and it was important to me that he have the same nurse visit him every infusion because he was very young, and he developed bonds of relationships with the nurses that he had. And this company thought that that was a frivolous request, and after many times of explaining how important it was to me, I finally had their nurse manager come to my home and in a great fit of frustration tell me that I just could not be the boss in this situation and that she would be the one to decide who would come and do my son's infusions. After I thought of that, I decided that no, I think I can be the boss in this situation, and that is when I switched to Quantum and started having my son's infusions through Quantum. And incidentally, we do have the same nurse come every time. Since we're talking about consumers, I think one of the best things that Quantum does is our Lifestyle Plus program, where we really provide some extra things that make the patient's life more comfortable. One of the points I think it's important to make is that we need to not wait for those patients to ask for the products that we have available. The chronically ill are so tired of asking and asking and asking. They need someone to try and anticipate what their needs might be and to provide those. That would go a long way in making people feel good about Quantum and good about their involvement with a company that would provide some extra things for them. When I talk about being consumers, I tell them about those things to really keep track of the cost, to keep track of the things that they're getting. Another important thing is to make sure that we provide these consumers with information about the costs. Why is it so expensive? Where is the money going? How is it being used? They are becoming educated. They know what the cost of the products are. They know that sometimes what they pay is more than what they see in a booklet as being a wholesale price. They need to understand that there are costs involved, and they need to be able to see in black and white on a regular basis what those costs are for and how they're being used. That's an important thing. We wouldn't expect any less if we were purchasing a car, and so we need to remember those things in our health care. Another thing I think we can do to really help the consumer is to provide them with a new attitude. When you live in a world of chronic illness, things can be very, very cloudy sometimes. And I think that one of the things that Quantum can do from a corporate level as well as on the level of the nurses, the area managers, is we can take on a new attitude about chronic illness. Chronic illness does not have to be so devastating and so depressing. Speaking as someone who has lived in this world for my entire life, there are some positive things about chronic illness, and I think that we would all do well to have a little bit different attitude about people's limitations and about what their life will be like. One of the things I do when people call me is I say, you've heard a lot of bad news, now let me give you some good news. Life isn't going to be so bad.
Well, Kathy, you've mentioned a number of situations where you've been able to bring about a positive result. What happens when you run into a person who can be very difficult? How do you deal with that?
Well, John, I think that we all have run into difficult people at one time or another. The problem is that we expect people to relate to us on a certain level, on the level that we relate to them. And it's easy when you're providing care for someone for ourselves to feel very calm and in control about it. But we have to understand that these people are relating to us from a very basic level. They feel that their survival is being threatened. And really the survival instinct is one of the greatest that we have as humans. And so we need to understand that these people will become defensive. They will feel threatened. My son just returned home from scout camp in Yellowstone, and it was interesting. I was reading a paper that they gave him before he left about the bears that are there in Yellowstone, and they said if you see a bear, you're not generally in danger unless the animal is wounded or unless it has its young. And I reflected on how that is very much like humans, and that's very much like people in this situation. They can relate on a very rational level unless they feel that their survival is threatened, if they're ill, if they're not feeling well, or if it's a parent trying to fight for the survival of their child. And so we need to understand that they're coming to us from a very different level than what maybe most of us have experienced, and to give them the benefit of allowing them to be difficult sometimes.
Kathy, that's a great example, and I think one we should all keep in mind when we're working with individuals who are facing really difficult situations. Also, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to come down this morning and spend these few minutes discussing exactly what you do as a patient advocate. Again, our goal is to let the branches know exactly how they can work with you, and now we have a means for them to understand what your role is. So, thank you for being with us today. Hopefully the information that Kathy has shared will be beneficial in the daily challenges that you have in the branch as we seek to meet the needs of our consumers. If you have additional questions, please contact us at Corporate Communications, and we'll be happy to respond.